This is Spotlight Omaha. Spotlight Omaha is a local podcast that highlights local businesses and influential movers and shakers in the Omaha business community. Spotlight Omaha is brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing. Now, from the Pyramid Contractor Studios, the host of Spotlight Omaha, Jimmy Allen.
Not something you're going to say a whole lot, but good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into the Spotlight Omaha podcast, where we take you around the city of Omaha, introduce you to local business owners, influential figures, and people who are making an impact on our community. We are brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing. If you need help with search engine optimization, or you want an entire team to manage your social media marketing platform, Pixel Fire Marketing is here to help. Check out pixelfiremarketing.com for more details. Joining us in the Pyramid Contractor studio today is Deanna Busby-Rast with Authentica Group. Deanna, thanks for being here. I appreciate this.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
We promised you two for today. This is our second interview, and I appreciate it is coming back and joining us for the second time today. Talk to us about what Authentica Group is and what you're doing.
Okay, thanks. Authentica Group is a career coaching and a business coaching as well as a training organization. And the reason it does, or I focus on three areas, is because I really do believe that coaching comes in and out of our lives and our careers at different points. And so when you think about Authentica Group, I like to look at it in three ways. I am 100% committed to the professional growth of individuals. I do that either by partnering with individuals who maybe approach me and say, hey, I'm really either in career transition or I'm at that executive level, but I really want to improve my executive presence. So that's one way.
Sure.
The other way is really coming close and partnering with businesses themselves to help grow their best people.
Yep.
So going in, spending some time doing executive coaching, professional development training also comes into play. So I'll come in if we need presentation design and delivery training, we need communications training, I will do that on a more tailored basis. And then with my commitment all tied to professional growth and development, I get to host my own events, which is called Connect and Inspire.
I want to talk about that in a minute, but I want to talk about the coaching aspect for a second. So anybody that's ever coached, whether it's athletics or choir or just been a teacher at any level, it's kind of addicting, right? And as soon as that light bulb moment happens, you see it start to click for people. That's the payoff, right? Why was that the calling for you after 30 years in corporate America?
Such a great question. In fact, I tell a little bit of a story around when I told my husband I was ready to leave corporate America. And
naturally, he was terrified, correct?
He was terrified. Okay, yep. He said, what? Why would you do that?
Sure.
But the deal is that actually, if you look back, if I took a deep look back at my career, when I very first started in corporate, I was a trainer. And when I was a trainer and I could see the light bulbs go off, that was so fulfilling to me.
Sure.
And as I continued to grow through my career, when I was working in sales, it was the same idea. If I saw a client get it and understand what the potential was, that is where my happy moment was. Sure. And then when I got into leadership, it was the same thing.
I never thought about it that way. You're right, because obviously I deal with sales as well. That's a really good point. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so when I brought it all together, where my happy moment is when the other person had the aha moment. And so I really wanted just to bring that forward in my business. And you're right, when that happens, it is such a fulfilling feeling, both for client and for Deanna. One more thing I'll say on that front is I had an employee one time come up to me and he said, you remind me of a football coach. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, because you can be tough on us. You can hold us accountable, but you keep us motivated, keep us wanting to come back in and do it the next day.
I'm not even joking. And anybody that knows me knows that I live in the sports realm. But like, when you were telling that story, there was a moment I coached kids from when they were 8 to they were 13 playing football. And we ran this play that we couldn't run at all one day. And while you're telling that story, I was thinking about the moment where we executed it for the first time. And I watched our offensive lineman go, oh, that's why we're supposed to be in this space. And I got to imagine when you're talking to somebody that I'm working hard every day. And I feel like we're putting out a good product and we're not getting the processes down and we're not making the money that we think we should for the amount of effort we're putting in. It's got to be a very similar moment where they go, oh, we just needed to turn this way to make sure that we're getting in the right path. Is it fair to say?
Absolutely. When you think about coaching, quite often, a lot of people likely inherently know what needs to be done. They just need help pulling it out. Just
or missing a step.
Exactly. Let's just talk more about the problem and then we'll solve to it.
When somebody comes to you, because I think a lot of people probably more men are probably afraid to ask for the help, right? Because we're idiots, and that's neither here nor there. But how often are you having, I don't want to say sell yourself, but explain why what you do is a necessity, and how you can get them to turn the right direction or take the right step? And is that a struggle for you?
Well, I'm going to statistically just share with you. I
Sure.
mean, I see my numbers, right? So
Yeah.
when we look at the clients that I have, it's about a 70-30 split. 70% are women, 30% are men. So there is an inherent difference between who I'm coaching. But I will
Sure.
tell you that now, when I was in corporate, it was a completely different situation,
Right.
especially running sales. It was, heavily dominated by men. But here's what I will say. Coaching does not work for everybody.
Agreed.
It has to be those individuals who want to be more self-aware, those individuals that want to be challenged differently, the ones that really want that self-improvement. And so I will tell you that once they are committed to it, it almost becomes addictive.
What is, and I think that's the success portion, right? Everybody wants to be more successful.
Mhm.
What is the biggest misconception about what Authentica Group does, and how do you change that narrative?
Well, I think the misconception is that I'm living, or the business itself is in a very competitive space, right?
Okay.
So when you think about other coaching industries, there's very large corporate businesses like BetterHelp,
Sure.
as an example. There is a lot of leadership coaching that is out there. There's a lot of sales coaching that is out
You
there.
and Tony Robbins are exact competitors.
Not quite yet.
Yeah.
But the deal is there's a lot of choices, right? So I can go and I can call, or call Sandler Sales Coaching, take something off the shelf and get it in front of my sales team.
Sure.
Or you can work with somebody very intimately, like Deanna with Authentica Group, and you're going to get a customized training.
How big of a deal is that for you to have your name on it and your fingerprints?
I think it's huge.
And give that intimate personal connection.
Well, I'll tell you, as you think about growing as a business, my
Yeah.
mentor, my own coach, has talked a lot about that. And he's talked to me about, you are your brand. You are behind that name.
Great point.
And when people are buying, they're buying Authentica Group because of you.
Yep.
So let's be careful about how much we grow, how quickly we grow, because we want to make sure you're able to take that forward, because we've got to
Provide
go
the best product.
Exactly. And so when going back to your original question, from the competitive standpoint, how am I separating myself? I think it really comes down to when they're working with me. It ties down to the style that I bring forward. And I talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago, is that I'm not one of those leadership coaches, executive coaches, coaches in general, who is going to be super timid, or I'm going to softly walk around topics.
It's not going to help anybody.
It's not going to help.
Yeah.
So I am who I am. I'm a direct, honest person filled with integrity.
And if you're looking for coaching, those are the things that
Those
should
are
matter.
the things. I'm going to listen, but I'm going to require action and accountability. And
Sure.
those are huge when we think about it from a coaching
Because you
standpoint.
can't succeed if you're not being accountable. Right?
Exactly.
You mentioned you work with businesses and individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Is it difficult for you to separate those two things? Because I think when you make it an emphasis to put a little personalized and intimate touch on it, probably a little more exciting to work with an individual versus a larger group. Is it tough for you to do that?
So, I love both equally the same. And I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but here's how I look at it.
We'll let you sit in the middle. It's fine.
when I get to work with individuals and I can help them grow their business, or I get them to their aha moments, that is incredibly fulfilling.
Sure.
But when I'm doing the coaching within an organization, those same things happen.
Yeah, just in a larger group.
They just happen in a larger group, or they happen in a different setting. And then the other thing that I find incredibly fulfilling with my business is I do love to educate, and that training component that I get to do is also really fulfilling as well. Even though I don't want it all about me, I want it about the client. But I find them in a lot of respects very equal to each other.
When somebody is coming to you for the first time, whether it be a large group, whether it be an individual entity, what are some of the first few questions that they're asking, or the most commonly asked question at the opening step?
Well, you'll get a lot of questions around where's my level of expertise? Where do I focus, right?
Sure.
What's going back to kind of that ideal client mindset?
Yeah.
They will ask a lot of questions regarding that. What's my style? A lot of clients will ask what my style is. What metrics do I have that shows the success? So if I'm working with a business, a lot of metric based comes in, more objective than subjective information.
Spreadsheets.
Mhm. Tell me how I know you're making this successful.
Leads me to the next question. Who is your ideal client? What does that look like?
So my ideal client are those individuals that really have that desire to invest in themselves. Whether that means that they are already working and they want to improve, they want to get to that next level. That's one. But it's also those new entrepreneurials who are really looking for someone to help them launch the business. Because I spent all those years in corporate America, and most of those were in sales and marketing and developing the businesses, I get a lot of energy about working on the front side of
It's your passion,
business.
right?
It's my passion, is helping people grow, helping businesses grow.
We're catching up with Deanna Busby-Rast of Authentica Group here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. When you're sitting down with somebody, and I think a lot of times they want to talk about sales and money and how do I make more and how do I get to that next step?
Mhm.
Is it difficult for you to, or is it difficult for people? Let me rephrase this. Is it difficult for people to look inwards and realize all that stuff kind of comes when you improve internally? And is that kind of the secret sauce?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question, because when you think about business coaching, there is a lot of coaching out there. We've already talked about that. But when I talk about coaching, especially those smaller to mid-sized businesses, we have to realize that life and work happen at the same time. And so sometimes when I'm coaching, and maybe I have this whole process for business coaching, making sure we're checking, doing the check marks and dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and then life happens.
Is it fair to say that's the least important part?
I would say that it depends on the energy of the client.
Sure.
But I will tell you that if you've got a new entrepreneur who is just starting business, we got to overcome a few things. Sometimes
They
it's
didn't realize
fear.
their first check wasn't going to be $1 million.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's fear, it's
Yeah.
confidence, it's a lot of those things. And that's where the coaching style comes into play. You could go hire a coach who just wants to, do the check boxes, or a coach that's really going to listen, be intuitive, and go, wait a minute, we're going to pause here.
Because more money doesn't fix everything.
Exactly. So let's go back to where we really need to focus. Now, if I'm working with a mid-sized or a fairly good-sized organization who's bringing me in to develop their sales process, that's a
where
little
the focus
different.
is, right?
It's a little different.
I want to talk about the sales portion of it too, because the one thing that keeps coming up in this room that I think is just fascinating is if I had $1 for every time in this room and somebody said, I didn't think I would be good at sales, but I kind of like it, or I love it.
Mhm.
And people have been really surprised by that. But I think a lot of it is, and this is something you can relate to, public speaking,
Mhm.
being told no, having to kind of adapt on the fly.
Mhm.
What are some things that are the common factors in people overcoming that and realizing, hey, I can be good at this because what I'm selling is what I'm passionate about?
Mhm. Well, I think when I'm working with individuals, it's coming down to, first, we have to understand where some of our root cause is coming from. If I have doubt in myself, where's that coming from?
Great point.
Right. And also we have to understand what helps drive and grow business. Right. So that is, when we think about it, it is about what our purpose is, what our mission is, what our story is. What's my value? What's my idea? What's the whole idea I have
Sure.
behind it? And then the best part of it is that we figure out how to take all of that stuff and break it down into what I call very common messages that you want to send out to your client base. You got to play in 3s or 5s. You don't want to go beyond that. And then it is about helping them with the elevator pitch, getting it down. And then we just want to get to that one client that wants to give us that chance. And then for me, it's just go forward.
Told you
It's
so.
a lot of fun.
I have to ask this because this is relatable to me. And I got to give out the shout out to Summer Franco at US Bank. I tell the story all the time. But on my radio show at night, when we first started doing it, we wanted to interview high school football teams because that's what I wanted to talk about.
Mhm.
And I never thought about, hey, stupid, you're talking to thousands of people that are listening to you. Maybe talk about what they went to. In a network meeting, she asked, hey, just curious, why don't you interview female athletes? And I went, oh, that's a really good question. And I tell the story all the time. Are the interviews that we do with female athletes dwarf the male interviews 4-1? It's incredible. But it's something that I would have never thought about because it wasn't in my headspace at that time.
Mhm.
How difficult is it for clients that you're talking to or people that are starting or entrepreneurs for the first time to think outside of their box and maybe not know what they don't know for the first time?
Well, I think honestly, this is where a little bit of coaching process comes into play.
Sure.
The first thing I do when somebody's interested in coaching and we've signed on the dotted line, they get to spend some time by themselves filling out a questionnaire.
Okay.
Let's learn, where are we at? Where are we starting from? Because some clients will call me and they are a well-established business. They just need to reinvent the sales process. They need to remarket themselves. They need to get back out there in a different way. Maybe the sales process is slowed.
Sure.
When it's a new entrepreneur coming to it, this is their chance to really sit back and think.
Get in the creative space.
Get the creative space going. And then we work off of that. That's our launching pad.
Yeah.
I need to know where they're coming from.
The one topic, the one word that I think this is episode number 167, that the one word that always comes up is fear. And we mentioned it, you were talking to your husband, I'm leaving corporate America after 30 years. He's looking at you like you got 6 heads. It's a conversation that happens almost every single episode. There's always a reason not to, right? And if somebody's coming to you and they're going, oh, Dan, I really want to do this, but I get this paycheck every 2 weeks. I'm making X amount of dollars per hour. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to that person that's got that one piece of fear that's hanging on to them that they just aren't ready to, or feel reluctant to take that leap to start their own business?
A lot of it comes back down to asking them to look at themselves 5 years from now. Just take a step back and see where you see yourself, right? And if you didn't do this, or you did do this, let me rephrase. If you did do this, you took that faith, you took that jump, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Sure. I mean, you can always go back and get another 9 to 5, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I had to do as well, because I was the primary financial provider for years for our family.
Sure.
I traveled 70% of the month. I was gone a lot. It was heavy work.
Yeah.
And
mentally and physically.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is after I told my husband, I said, just give me a minute. Let me get the business plan done. And it said, so you have something to read and then we'll go from there. And his support was absolutely amazing.
He's not a mind reader, so he can't see your thought
after he read it, he was like, I'm in, go do it. And he's been my biggest cheerleader ever since.
I mean, it's almost the same story with my wife. When we started the radio show and we were getting ready for our 3rd child. So naturally it made the most sense for me to quit my job at the time. But it's one of those things that we're sitting there in the days that we would make sales for our business. We won the Super Bowl, right? It was celebrate and cheer because it was a benefit. And then we started looking at it and go, well, what happens if we devote all of our attention and time to this? How much more could it benefit from that? Is that kind of the thought process around what you're teaching people? Is what if you go all in on what you're passionate about and what sky's the limit kind of conversation, right?
Absolutely. Because once you go all in, right, then your mind really gets in creative mode. And what I always tell new entrepreneurs is, this business plan that we're doing today, we're going to look at in 3 months and we're going to augment it. We're going to change it. Because it's going to evolve. And that is the greatest thing about starting business from the ground up, is the chance that really there is no rules, right? Other than we got to make sure we're filing taxes and we've got the legal aspect taken care of.
Jail, rule number
right.
one.
Exactly. We're not going to jail, right? But it's all about being in creative mode until we get in that mode where it starts to just chime. It's moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it is just the creative energy that comes from that.
It's so funny because when people are always like, what do you want to be? Like, what's your end goal? And we were having this conversation before the camera went on about how long I've been doing this. And my end goal 6 years ago is almost laughable today, right? Like, how often are you having conversations with your clients about setting goals and how it's okay to get to the carrot at the end of the stick? You just kind of need another carrot after that.
Well, goal setting is really important. And I will tell you adamantly, it's once a year for sure.
Okay, great.
I mean, there is absolutely no question. I have a reflection document that I give everyone.
It's a conversation in my head every day. So.
I know we reflect all the time, right?
Yeah.
But I will tell you that once a year, we have to be incredibly disciplined to sit down with ourselves and say, okay, what did I accomplish? What are my goals as I look at the year ahead? And that means both, personally as well as professionally, because again, I believe work and life, they cross paths every single day.
Yeah.
And so we
almost
really,
by an hour by
exactly. So we have to know that. So that is one thing. Absolutely ask any one of my clients, doesn't matter whether it's on the business side or it's on the individual side. That is something that we start doing around November, probably up until about March.
I apologize because I think you've already answered this question. When did you start Authentica Group? When did you decide to go?
Actually, I got the LLC in November of 2022, and I went to classes to get certified in coaching.
So we're almost going on 3 years. What is something, because I think this is a fun practice, what is one of those goals that you've accomplished that maybe was probably a little bit too small, but seemed impossible day one?
I would say probably my Connect and Inspire events.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I had this idea, but I was like, oh, I don't know. And they turned out really well. And I've had 3 now.
That's incredible. Hey, we're catching up with Deanna Busby-Rast here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing, Pyramid Contractor. She's with Authentica Group and is the face of the company. And she, as you just mentioned, you literally are the face. You get up in front of thousands of people and speak. We're going to get to an event you have coming up in Charlotte. I'm excited to get your thoughts on that. But another thing that we talk about a lot in this room is imposter syndrome. And I can't do this because I'm not fill in the blank. How big of it, public speaking is the number one fear in the world. Like it's more people are afraid of that than dying. Was that ever an issue for you? And does it still become an issue for you today?
I'm glad you asked that question. Had it ever been an issue for me? Yeah. I can remember being 23 years old and getting up in front of, 30 people that I had to train. And I was absolutely terrified. But I think for me, it was, I practiced a lot. That helped me get over it. Now, training versus getting up in front of 200, 300, 400 people.
Motivating.
Totally different conversation. And what I've had to learn to do is create a routine. What is that routine that I'm going to do that's going to help calm me down, but yet give me just enough anxiety that I get that energy when I hit the stage?
Do you have a set number of jokes you hit?
Yeah, exactly. Or I try to hit, right?
Yeah.
But absolutely. I mean, it's layering humor into it. But I think for me,
it's going to be entertaining at the same time as educational, right?
Exactly. So it's, you always want to get that little laugh. And it's true, even when you think about it, when I was selling all those years, and I used selling as, when I was doing corporate sales, you're sitting in front of bank executives, do you want to make it boring or do you want to liven it up a little bit? Yeah.
Because I think of we can only reference this to our own experiences, right? Like we've gone out on site and done remotes, and I do the Creighton men's basketball post game show, and there's 18,000 people in the arena and things like that. And it's the exact same thing as if I'm sitting in a studio talking to my co-host. You're doing the exact same thing, just a lot more eyes on the product at that point. Does it feel like the same thing when you're sitting in a room with somebody versus one of those conferences, or is it just that big of a different of a scale?
I think it's a difference of a scale. I mean, there is no doubt about it. I mean, like sitting here and having a conversation with you is very natural and super easy, right?
840 people.
Right. Oh, hey.
Hello,
but I will say that, when you're up in front of thousands of people, it is absolutely a different effort that you go through. You go through all the practice and the practice almost till you practice exhaustion. But I think for when it comes down to it, one of the things that I had always found very helpful from a public speaking standpoint is if I just had one nod in the audience, just one.
That's all you need, right?
That's all I needed. Just one person that felt like it was making sense.
Because it's great when you get the laugh.
Oh,
if you don't get the laugh, that's when it's
that hurts.
Yeah. You pivot a little bit, right?
Yep.
I want to talk about the event that you have coming up. You're going to be the keynote speaker at the Emerging Leaders event November 9th to the 12th in Charlotte, North Carolina. But it's for women in consumer finance. And you've mentioned a few times the space you work in with men's numbers versus the female numbers. Why is it such a big deal for you to represent women?
So powerful. So first of all, the Women in Consumer Finance was something that was started back in 2018, back when I was in corporate America. I got incredibly invested in this organization. Working in the banking and the finance space, women really needed to have a place where they felt safe, where they could have these conversations. So I've stayed involved in the Women in Consumer Finance event, even after I left corporate. So a couple of things that I will tell you is that I'm absolutely invested in the professional growth and development of people, professionals. Doesn't matter whether male or female. But I will tell you, growing up in corporate America, that as a female, I definitely had to deal with very different things.
The growth of females in finance are generations behind men just because they were never allowed to. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. And then you couple that with the fact that I was in a sales executive, a sales leader, running sales and marketing, which women in sales actually only represent about 15% of the C-level positions that are out there across the United States. So my my thought process is this, is that if we can help as women, we can help those younger individuals, those younger women continue to raise their voices.
Because not anybody's fault. Our generation didn't have that before, is correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So if we can help them get comfortable in raising their voices sooner and faster, then their journey to get to that same level will be much faster than it was for me.
If you don't feel comfortable answering this, that's fine.
No.
I'm a man. I've never had to worry about this situation, and I have enough self-awareness to understand and appreciate that. But with a father of 3 daughters, these are things that are concerning me. Do you think that the problems that you probably faced 15 to 20 years ago are still prevalent in the business world today? Or do you think that's changing enough to some degree?
I think it's changing to some degree.
Okay.
But here's
I honestly didn't know the answer to that. So
yeah. And I will also tell you this, and I feel 100% adamant about this. The executive that I became over the years was because a lot of men invested their time in me.
Sure.
I had some amazing leaders.
Great.
And I was fortunate to just learn from them and really take it to the next level. But I've been faced with those that didn't. Yeah. And those are the ones that
we can only talk about our experiences, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we're catching up with Deanna Busby-Rast of Authentica Group here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. We're kind of hitting that point in the day where we tend to shut her down. Is there anything about Authentica Group or yourself that we haven't mentioned that people should know about you?
You know, one of the things that I love that we have talked about is facing fear.
Yeah.
And overcoming that imposter syndrome.
It's the most commonly discussed thing in this room.
And the truth is that it does not matter whether we're male or female. We are dealing with that in different areas of our life at different times in our life. And the one thing I will say, and maybe I'll take this directly from Mel Robbins, is that imposter syndrome is going to be there, but we only overcome it. And we only get to that level of confidence by trying. So if we don't try, you'll never know. And the one thing on fear, the last thing I'll say is I actually hired a coach during that whole entrepreneurial endeavor for myself because I was absolutely terrified. I didn't want anyone to know.
Sure.
I was terrified. So I hired my own coach to continue to push me through to get through this idea that I could do it. I just had to convince myself I could do it.
And it helps to be coachable, even if you're a coach, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to do this today. I'm glad we could get it in. Where can people find you at and book your services?
Yeah. So authenticagroup.com. That's on the web. You can also on Facebook and on LinkedIn. It's going to
tag
be
them on both.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yep.
And then the last thing I'll throw out, if I can, on my phone number is 612-845-3736. Yes, it's the Minneapolis number.
Ask, where's 612? I'm glad you threw
I worked up there for 12 years,
sure.
So that's where it's coming
the
from.
only place on the planet that's colder than here today.
And more snow likely. Yes, exactly.
Deanna, I'm glad we were able to do this. Thank you for your time today. If you're a business owner, and we know, there's plenty of you listening and watching right now, you want to be coached, or maybe you have some questions about your sales and you could benefit from just a fresh set of eyes and some experience, get a hold of Deanna and her team. Again, it's authenticagroup.com today. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be back tomorrow. Even though it's Valentine's Day, we still have a Spotlight Omaha podcast tomorrow. Hopefully you can join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. here on the Spotlight Omaha podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. We'll see you in the morning. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.